This is Windshield Hoops. What's going on, everybody? This is Wilder Adams alongside Zach Dean, and we're back. We're back after a few weeks of, just moving into college. So, Zach, how have you been?
I'm pretty good. First few weeks college went smoothly. Like the professors trying to get into radio early on. That's going well. Got some USA basketball we've been watching. Watched the game this morning. They lost, unfortunately. But yeah, I've been having fun watching basketball. Wish the games weren't on so early in the morning, but it's whatever. It's basketball at least. But I mean, we're like 4 weeks away from training camp and stuff, so we're getting there.
That game, man, I didn't watch it, but I woke up and I saw the box score, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is still not getting rebounds. I mean, Anthony
Yep,
Edwards had to drop. He
35.
had to drop 35 points, and they lost. That's crazy. But I still think Team USA will be okay, even though that isn't very encouraging. But yeah, man, same. I mean, I just moved into my new apartment this week. So we're getting acclimated. My dog was sick, so I was up all night at the hospital. So that was fun. Yeah, we're just getting started on a new year, and we're ready to get back to it. And today we have a few topics that we're going to break down. We're going to talk about Team USA, but we're also going to talk about the 2024 NBA draft. We're also going to talk about just Giannis trade destinations, and yeah, it should be a pretty good episode. And we started talking about it in the beginning of this episode, but Team USA, let's get some of our stock risers and droppers. And Zach, I'll start with you.
Well, the big stock riser looks like Anthony Edwards as he's like asserting this like alpha role, and he's done that playing next to some, it's a young roster, but there's still veteran guys like Jalen Brunson, and he's really taken over as the number one guy. He had 35 points today in their loss, which is the second most points ever by a USA player in the World Cup. He's been dominating this whole tournament. I think he's averaging over 20 a game in the actual games that matter. He's been awesome. I've been a big fan of what Paulo Banchero's been doing. He's been so efficient and dominant off of the bench. I think even the Orlando Magic could explore what he could look like as a backup center in the NBA too. I think that's a role that he could actually play in. Austin Reeves didn't have the greatest of games today, but overall he's been shooting over 50% from three. He's been a super good connective player. And yeah, I mean, guys like Halliburton have had big moments as well. I've really liked watching Josh Hart play basketball, but Anthony Edwards has been the guy that's really stood out, and that's kind of what you and me expected, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at your background with the Anthony Edwards poster right there. That's kind of our expectation. He's that guy, and I believe he is ready to take a big year four leap, and it's going to be really exciting. And the fact that he's on Team USA, I think, is only going to trampoline that process. So it's really great to see what Anthony Edwards is doing. And I agreed with a lot of the guys that you said. Halliburton, I've been really impressed with. I mean, late in games, when they just allow him to manage late games, I think he's better at that than Brunson. I think he's better at managing late games
Yeah,
than Brunson. And that is a very interesting factor. And I also personally think he's a better fit in that starting lineup than Brunson is. But maybe with Brandon Ingram on the bench, maybe that makes it a little more balanced and whatnot. But yeah, I've really liked Hallie. Paolo Banchero has been super efficient. Austin Reeves at moments has been the team's most efficient player. So there's a lot of good talent on this team, but you're leaving the stock droppers to me. So I got two people in mind. Number one, Twitter knows who I'm going to say. Twitter knows it's Brandon Ingram, man. It's Brandon Ingram. He's coming to Team USA, and he's been the worst player on the team. He has struggled to score more than 2 to 4 points on a consistent basis. He is struggling to create efficient shots. It feels like his place on the roster is just really iffy. And with Ingram, he's always had that thing where people are always expecting the superstar leap. that I just never think is coming. I think he's a really good I think he's a okay, solid second option on a good team. That's what I think he is. And I honestly think that he can fit with guys like Zion and be a good number two. But we are seeing on Team USA, like, there's just better players out there. I would say Hallie's better. I would say Brunson's better. I would say Ant's better. You can make a case on certain teams you'd rather have a Mikal Bridges because Ingram isn't a number one option who can consistently attack the rim. And that's a big thing, especially when you aren't a great defender. So Ingram's really good. He's in the top 25 to top 40 range, but I just think that's what he is as a player. So Ingram, definitely a stock dropper. And another guy who was a stock riser in the beginning, but it's kind of dropped off a little bit is Jaren Jackson Jr. I mean, can the guy get a freaking rebound? Can the guy get a rebound? It took 6 quarters to get a rebound in FIBA. You're bigger than all these guys. What are we doing here? You know? So what is Jaren Jackson Jr. doing? Get a freaking rebound. So those are the two guys I think of when I think of stock droppers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Ingram, when he's not scoring for you, he's not doing it too much else. And we saw it again today with Jaren Jackson Jr. He had 5 fouls. I think it was 3 rebounds today. Like, he was missing out on some big rebounds that Lithuania was getting for clutch putbacks and was really extending the lead there. Like, I don't get what's going on there. I don't know if he's chasing blocks too much. I think that's part of it. But, like, he's just never in good positioning to rebound the basketball. And luckily, he plays next to somebody in Memphis like Steven Adams that can actually grab those rebounds.
Yep.
But yeah, it's been weird. Like, they've been a better rebounding team with Boncaro on the court. Probably not better.
A better rebounder.
Yeah, probably not better defensively because Jackson Jr. does what he does there, but like he's got to figure out the rebounding. USA, I think they have an elimination game against Italy coming up, which I think they will win that. But he's got to figure out the glass. That's a big part of it for him. And yeah, he had a rough game today for sure. That lowered his stock, I would say.
Can you clarify this with me? So is US ineligible to win the gold now?
No, they can still win the gold. They qualified for the quarterfinals, I believe. So they play Italy. I don't know if it's a win or go home for both teams. I'm pretty sure it is for the USA though, at least. And if they win, they move on to maybe the semifinals. I'm not sure if they're like in the final 8 stage now. They might be. I know Dominican Republic just got eliminated. China got eliminated. France has been eliminated, obviously. But yeah, a lot of teams are getting the chopping block right now.
It's that time of the year. We're in September now, so things are about to get pretty interesting with Team USA. I really want to see with Jaren Jackson Jr. He's just such a special athlete that you'd think you'd get more than 6 rebounds a game by accident, and you would think with the physical advantage he has in an international tournament like this, he would get more, physically dominant than he's been. Obviously, he's a natural flyer. He jumps on everything. That's what makes him a really good shot blocker, but that also sacrifices, interior presence. And honestly, as fun as Jackson Jr. is, having a center like that might be the downfall of USA too, because, look at Lithuania. You got a guy like Valanciunas in the paint who's so big, so physical, can rebound everything. If you're a team that can beat Team USA, it's because you got size and brawn. That's just how it is. If you're going to out-rebound USA, you have an opportunity. If you can bully USA, you have an opportunity. And when France got eliminated, that was a pretty good sign for the US and their championship hopes. But then you get a team like Lithuania, bad matchup, and I think today that proved it.
Yeah, and Lithuania. They just had like a crazy game too. I think they shot 54% from 3. So,
yeah.
That will probably regress. I think if they played again, USA would probably beat them. But
for sure.
We'll see what happens. And it shows that USA is capable of losing and they have things they got to figure out. So, maybe this could be good for them to lose that game. Not sure. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, USA, it's FIBA World Cup, it's not Team USA. I saw some buzz on Twitter that this just isn't the same USA because we don't have the same pool of talent. I don't agree. I just think with it being the World Cup, you're not getting as many of those stars committed, obviously. So,
Yeah.
Next year I'm sure we'll get more like a more filled out bench. Like no disrespect to Josh Hart, no disrespect to Bobby Portis, Walker Kessler, really good role players. USA could do better than that on the Olympic stage.
Yeah.
So I expect them to do better than that next year. So I guess we'll have to wait and see there. And so let's talk about some of the other World Cup trends. So we talked about Lithuania for a second. And what are some other takeaways you have?
Well, Canada has like a legit core going forward with, Shea. They got guys like Jamal Murray and Andrew Wiggins that can come too. Alexander Walker's been playing well. You got Dylan Brooks. Like that Canada team looks nice. France going forward in the future. If they somehow got a front court of Wembanyama and Embiid, Gobert, that'd be nuts. Other than that, I'm trying to think of just the international play overall in general around the league is really spreading. I think, there's a bunch of teams that have, star talents that will be playing for them. Obviously Giannis with Greece when he comes back. But I really think USA versus Canada could become like this rivalry. Even I think they could play in the World Cup this year too. But I think Canada's a really interesting team to watch going forward.
Yeah, totally. And they got we're going to talk about the 2024 NBA draft later today, but they have a Justin Edwards coming in after next year. Maybe he plays in the Olympics. And there's 7 NBA players in that team. And I'm not sure if any other international team can make that claim. Like France, maybe in a couple years, but not yet. So, yeah, Canada's deep. Obviously, with Shea, you said, Murray, Wiggins, Barrett, Alexander Walker, Brooks. You can go on and on. Deep team. And because that team is so long and so talented defensively in the perimeter, that is a team that can give U.S. trouble, especially when you have like anchors like Ant leading the team, these perimeter players. We don't have a lot of great American bigs anymore. So look at all the bigs. I mean, Jokic is from Serbia. Embiid is from Africa, right? And then you look at Victor.
Gobert, Towns.
Gobert is from France. Towns is from the Dominican, or not really, but he's playing for them. And
Sabonis, all these guys.
All these
like Anthony Davis.
AD is the only one, really, the only really dang good American big right now. So even like a DeAndre Ayton is from the Bahamas.
Yeah.
So the center position is becoming an international position. So for the USA, it's going to be a perimeter game. So a team like Canada being as long in the perimeter as they are, that makes them a problem. But yeah, I think if we're talking about long-term contenders around the US, Canada is obvious. I think France is obvious. France might be America's biggest nightmare next year because we do need more bigs, and they might have Embiid, Victor, and Gobert in the front court. So that's a problem. And they also have, they have multiple NBA players. They got some great Euro Cup players, like Nicolo, I think his name is, right? He's really good. He's been a long time EuroLeague star. I might have said his name wrong, so my apologies there, but I've watched him some. some. Not a ton, but some. And you have, Alexander Czar and Rizache coming in next year probably too, on top of those bigs. Like, that's a deep team. So, yeah, USA definitely not in the same position as they were in the 90s where they can put all these pros against these international guys and kill them, but definitely should still be the favorites if you bring in guys next year who can really help, like the Zions and the Jaws and the LaMelos and, Tatum's obviously, and maybe the KDs come back, Bookers. So USA should still be favorites going forward.
I wonder what the ideal USA lineup is going forward. For like realistically over the next few tournaments, it would be
And the
like
Olympics or FIBA?
probably Olympics. I mean, if you say Olympics, then you can maybe bring guys like Durant, but I'm like maybe like Olympics like 4 years from now, even like trying to name current guys. Would you do like Booker, Ant, Tatum, and then like
Boncaro.
Boncaro would be there, and then your big
Is it JJJ? Because I mean Tatum
maybe,
and Boncaro can rebound.
yeah, it's true.
But then we also have guys like Scoot coming in.
Yep, you
Scoot
could
might be a
have
really fun Olympic player.
yeah Lamelo maybe, and you got prospects coming up too, obviously. Um, Jar Zion maybe, I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
lot of guys.
Long story short, USA has talent if they can get that talent to commit. Obviously, nobody wants Trey Young because he keeps trying to
Yep,
play for USA and they keep denying him. By the way,
that's
that's an
crazy.
interesting storyline. Is it funny how Grant Hill is he's a partial owner of the Atlanta Hawks and he doesn't want Trey Young on Team USA?
Yeah, that's like I don't know. I feel like they're like so unattracted to his play style. Like it just wouldn't work as much in FIBA. I He would get targeted on defense all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
that shot selection just it wouldn't be a good time, and they would want him to like with his play style, like he would have to play a lot of off ball and like as an off ball shooter with USA, and he's never really done that before. That's not really what he wants to do. So that'd be weird.
Yeah, like obviously Trey Young is very often the best playmaker and the best scorer on a basketball team. But on Team USA, they don't need the playmaking. They don't need the scoring all the time. So what is he
Yep.
going to do when the ball isn't in his hands? So he's going to be a big defensive target. So that's not going to be a good bet. So yeah, Trey Young is one of those guys. He's really good running a team. But if he's going to be just a complimentary piece, he might go off like Brandon Ingram.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, they took
yeah,
Josh Hart over him. Like
yeah, the Josh Hart, Cam Johnson, right? Like a Halliburton makes sense on Team USA, right? Because
he does.
he might be the best connector in the league right now, outside of Jokic. So
I
he's
think
just an
he
amazing connective offensive player.
I was looking at like USA all time stats, and I think he's already the all time leader with I think he's already broken the all time record for assists in a game for a USA player in the World Cup twice. Like with 13 and 12 assists already. I think he's already done that twice.
He's incredible, man. I think Halliburton. He is very funny because he's not a flashy playmaker, and when you watch him, it doesn't like wow you like Luka Doncic, where he can whip a corner pass like under the rim, right on the money. But he just knows how to manage a game. He knows how to make the extra pass. He's a great playmaker in transition. And he has an unbelievable feel. What makes him a great passer is he always makes the right play. And it's not a like, I know people on Twitter are obsessed with advantage creation, like these isolation players allowing their gravity to collapse and find open players. Halliburton just makes the right pass. It's not that complicated. He's just a really good game manager.
100%.
And now I think this is a good place to stop on this topic, and we can transition to top 5 Giannis trade destinations. And Zach, we talked about this yesterday a little bit. I'll tell you this. So, my original list. You made a point yesterday that I want to change my list for, and should I do it or no?
Yes. Well, I changed my list anyway because you know who I had 5 yesterday. I got a new
Yeah.
5 today.
Oh
So you
yeah,
should
yeah.
be able to
Long story
change too.
short, Zach was being a clown. He had the Lakers 5. Like, what do they have to get? What do they have to get a Giannis, man? It
I had
was
a
funny.
casual moment. I'll
Nah,
admit
I
to
was
it.
giving Zach crap. It was pretty funny.
So should we go one by one again here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's go number 5.
All right. So number 5 today, I got the Brooklyn Nets, a team that they need to find a path to get a number one talent. They do have
Mm-hmm.
assets. They have a ton of picks. Those Suns draft picks, especially in the later years, I think should carry a little extra value than your normal first round pick. because projectively, I think it's fair to think that the Suns could be really bad then compared to a lot of teams. And they have a lot of young pieces. Like, you'd probably keep Mikal Bridges, but you could deal Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas. And then since this trade would happen after this year, probably, like, we're not thinking the trade happens now. Maybe someone like Dariq Whitehead has a good rookie year and is valued as well. So you're talking about, 3 young guys and like 4 or 5 picks for Giannis. I think that's a competitive package.
It
And
is. I
Giannis in
agree.
general, I think he would make a lot of sense on that Nets roster that's filled with a ton of 3-and-D type players. And I think Mikal Bridges is capable of being a number 2 star. You got Claxton there still. I mean, him and Claxton, that'd be kind of interesting in the front court. Maybe Claxton would be gone in a deal, maybe. But yeah, I think the general identity of the Nets fits Giannis pretty well, and he brings a lot they need.
Yeah, they got a quadrillion 3-and-D wings.
They
A ton of 3-and-D
have,
wings. They probably have
they
to
have them
deal
all.
all. They probably have to deal all of them to get Giannis. That's the only thing. But yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good fringe team in the Giannis conversation. I think that the Nets should be at minimum a fringe team in every star conversation. Like they
Yeah,
should be calling about Damian Lillard. In a year, they should be calling about Joel Embiid. Why not? This team is too good to stink. I mean, they're just too good defensively naturally. Even though their defensive rating wasn't great in the second half of last year, this feels like a good defensive team, though. And this team needs a number one guy. They have everything else but a number one guy, right? They got the arms, they got the legs, they got the hair, they got the face. They don't have the heart, man. That's they need to find the heart. They need to find the number one option. So that's the interesting thing that we're going to see if they can land that. And Giannis, if they can get that, I mean, bye Claxton. No disrespect. Claxton's really
yeah,
awesome, but if you can get Giannis and Claxton doesn't work, you flip Claxton. So that's a
for
good
sure.
choice. And my number 5 team is the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think the Cavs don't have like the best package to give a team like Milwaukee because they don't have much control on their draft picks through the Donovan Mitchell trade. But they do have a blue chip prospect. They do have one of the best young players in the NBA in Evan Mobley, who we'll see if he fits the Donovan Mitchell timeline in the short term while the Cavaliers convince Mitchell to stay, you know? So you can make a case like if you're the Bucks and you trade Giannis, I mean, Evan Mobley is one of the best young talents you can get back. That automatically gives you a young player you can build around who could possibly be a top 2 player on a championship team. So that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, Giannis and Allen is weird. So maybe the package is around Giannis for Mobley and Allen's dealt in a 3-team trade, and you convert the assets you get for Allen into the Giannis trade. Something like that, I think, can make you competitive in a trade offer because Evan Mobley is a top 15 asset in the NBA, arguably. So I think that would be a pretty interesting spot because you get to have Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell alongside Giannis Antetokounmpo. I mean, yeah, outside of Max Strus, that team would have a horrid bench, but that would be a team that has the best big 3 in the league, arguably. Like, I would probably take the balance of that roster over the Suns' big 3. So I think the Cavs would be a pretty fun fit.
Yeah, and we'll see. I think a lot of the Cavs' future success and if they want to win a championship is off of Evan Mobley's development. And because it's like, does Donovan Mitchell have number 1 on a championship team like upside, or is he more of like a perfect 2? And I think he would kind of be more of a perfect 2 to Giannis in that situation. And number 4, I got the San Antonio Spurs. They have a lot of picks. They got young guys. I think they could put together a compelling package. Him and Victor Wembanyama would be the best front court duo that we've seen in a very, very long time. The best defensive one since Duncan and Robinson. Like, it would basically be kind of that 2.0 type of deal. It would be so unbelievably fun to watch. I think they complement each other well. I don't think you have to put that many great players around them. Just some guys that can, space the floor, hit threes. But just the defensive identity that those two create is generational. And I mean, that would just be stupid to watch those two guys for the
That would be
next 5, 6,
stupid.
7 years. Yeah.
Holy. Yeah, I have them on my list. I agree with everything you said, and I'll top onto that later. But I think the Spurs definitely belong in the top five. And my number four team in the Giannis idea is the New Orleans Pelicans. This is the team I added in because I totally forgot about them. So that's on me. But Zach knows ball, so I'm sure he'll talk about them soon. But here's the thing. Can Giannis and Zion play together? No, they can't. Offensively, they can't. But he would basically be the Zion replacement. You would be dealing Zion in this deal. And you would be adding a ton of draft capital because they can afford it. So this would be a really fun competitive package that they can put together. And instead of having an injury prone one way interior scorer in Zion, you get a bigger, more durable two-way interior scorer in Giannis. You basically just give Giannis the Zion role on offense, and he's the defensive anchor that they don't have. Like Herb Jones is a great perimeter defender, but he's not a defensive anchor. So getting a guy like Giannis on that team, a team that was a number one seed when Zion was healthy, I mean, Giannis is an upgrade over Zion, so they should probably still be in that number one seed conversation if they're healthy enough. You give Zion or you give Giannis, Ingram, Murphy, McCollum, and some of those other young wings like Dyson Daniels. That's something.
Definitely.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I echo everything you said. I got them at number 3. I just think Giannis, like filling that Zion role and filling him around with all these shooters and like these young shooters and defensive guys, like the defense in that team would be nuts with him, Murphy, and Herb Jones, and then whatever else they want to have. But just from those 3 guys, it would be electric to watch. Yeah, I don't think I have too much to add other than what you said. I mean, yeah, I think that's potentially the best team in the West based off what we saw. I mean, even when the Pelicans were the best in the West last year, they didn't have Ingram on the court with Zion. Like it was Zion and then a bunch of other guys, you
Yeah.
know. But yeah, the Pelicans kind of just need like, somebody who can stay on the court at this point. They can't deal with this 40 games for with their top 2 players anymore. They need somebody who's durable enough to play a full season and, you know, just have some insurance, I guess, at least.
Ingram is quietly injury prone too, like you said.
He
I mean,
is.
Zion, when he's healthy, Ingram isn't healthy either. It's
Yeah.
it's the most bizarre thing. Like they just never get to see Ingram and Zion together, which is pretty unfortunate. But I agree on the Pelicans. And on number 3, I have the New York Knicks. I mean, with New York, they have a case to be competitive in a deal because they have control on around 8 first-round picks over the next 5 years. They have young core players. I mean, obviously, Emmanuel Quickly is not going to be the needle mover in a Giannis trade. Quentin Grimes won't be the needle mover in a Giannis trade. RJ Barrett definitely wouldn't be the needle mover in a Zion or in a Giannis trade. So there's definitely like those like there's no Zion, there's no Evan Mobley that they can deal in a trade like this, but they do have some decent young players and they have a ton of draft capital, which is a start. And you get Giannis in New York City next to Jalen Brunson. Perhaps you deal Randall or you keep Randall. I have no idea what you do with him, but you get Giannis next to Randall. And because it's New York City, Giannis can bring in his own guys to join him on this team. So Giannis would have the flexibility of doing that there, but it's also in a big market, especially he being an international star, being from Greece, playing for New York City. I mean, that can't hurt his brand, right? That can't. So I think New York would be a fun fit because he would have a second star. He would have that flexibility to get who he wants. And I mean, it's the Big Apple. It's the Big Apple. So he would have a lot of flexibility there.
Yeah, I think the New York culture and the team culture they have under Tibbs kind of embodies what Giannis wants and what he's about. And that's also my number 2 team here. I mean, basically echo what you said again here. I mean, they have the competitive package, they have the draft capital, they got to use it at some point. the Knicks at some point have to find their number one player. They don't have it on the roster right now, in my opinion. I think they're a really good basketball team going forward, but if they want to win a championship, they got to get the number one guy. Jalen Brunson's awesome, but he can't really – I don't think he can be that guy. Like, Giannis is that guy. He'll be that guy for like 5 more years, probably at least. So go and get that guy. They got to take a stab at, some opportunity when one comes around. Because I mean, superstars don't become available every day in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. I think the Knicks would be hard pursuing him. That Thanasis Antetokounmpo 4-year contract is going to hit hard. When Tibbs signs into that,
he'll be in the trade,
dude. He's like a Tibbs player.
We know what the Bucks are doing there, though. We know what the Bucks are doing there. Hey, Giannis, we'll keep you here long term because we got your brother.
Yeah, that. Oh man, but yeah, I think the Knicks would be a pretty great situation both ways.
100%. We agree on there. And number 2 for me, you already had this team. I have the San Antonio Spurs.
Mm-hmm.
Victor Wembanyama and Giannis would just be too OP, man. That would be crazy. I mean, I played on 2K last summer against Giannis and Victor, and I had no idea what to do because they blocked everything at the paint. The paint was absolutely sealed, and both can switch on the outside, and both are 7 foot plus. Yeah, Victor's 7'5", and I mean that core down the road. It wouldn't be shocking in 3 to 4 years. Those guys are the 2 best players in the league. And you have those guys on the same team. Like Zach and I can be the guards on this team, and that's a playoff team. So that would be just an amazing situation. And plus, I mean, you have the Spurs infrastructure, you have the Spurs ethos, you have a good organization building around those two. So I would expect that they can round out this roster around 2 generational big men. So I think the Spurs would be an unbelievable fit.
Absolutely. That would just be so fun to watch. Like, I don't know. That's the new Spurs, like, renovated dynasty forming right there.
That combo has a higher ceiling than Duncan and Robinson.
Yeah. Because you got a floor spacer.
I'm not saying they're going to be better than Duncan and Robinson, but I think peak Victor has a higher ceiling than both Duncan and Robinson, which is insane because Tim Duncan is probably the 3rd best player I've ever seen in my life. And 3rd or 4th. I think Duncan and Steph are pretty close for me. I would lean Duncan, though. So I would say Duncan is a top 3 player I've ever seen. So, like, if Victor reaches the climax of his potential, he could be better than Duncan, which is insane to say. Like, that feels like too much for a kid who hasn't played an NBA game, but you can talk yourself into a 7'5" guy who can shoot, create, pass, protect the rim, switch, right? So it's not like crazy. And plus, I think Giannis has a higher ceiling than David Robinson. So,
yeah. Some argue he's already above him all time.
Yeah. What's your number 1 team? I have a feeling we have the same number 1.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we do. It's the Oklahoma City Thunder. The assets they have is pretty unreal. They got so many young guys. They're going to have to move a lot of these picks and players at some point. They can move a guy like Holmgren and a few young guys and a ton of picks to go get Giannis. I think that package would make sense both ways. I think him next to Shea, and then you're probably keeping somebody like Jalen Williams, and then you got somebody like Giddey too. That's one of the best teams in basketball for a really long time. And I think him and Shea work really well together. I think that's a few championships right there. I think it makes too much sense between the 2 teams.
Yeah, that's nasty. I mean, OKC has so much assets. They're also my number 1 team. They have so much assets that they can make a Giannis type trade, which would be like one of the most jaw-dropping trade packages of all time, but still have the assets to build around those guys. That's the craziest thing about them. Like they can deal a couple blue chip players and 6-7 firsts and still have enough, first round picks in their back pocket to round out that roster. So
Yeah.
they have an insane situation going. And yeah, I can't disagree. You deal a Giddey or a Chet or a J-Dub, right, as your blue chip young player, and you probably throw in like a Casey Wallace and a ton of picks, right, to make that deal. And I'm not sure if any team can compete with that package, especially if OKC is willing to deal Chet in a deal, especially if that happens. Because if the Bucks can get Chet, and then I'll just give you guys my mock trade. I made a mock trade on Instagram yesterday. Here's the Photoshop for everybody. Here it is. I think Chet looks natural in a Bucks uniform. What do you think?
He does. Yeah, I agree.
He looks like a Milwaukee Buck. So this basically means that this is happening in 24-25. But I think I know my mock trade. What am I saying? My mock trade is Chet Holmgren, Keeson Wallace, Lou Dort, Davis Bertans, and 6 first-round picks for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Oh, yeah, maybe I should throw Thanasis Antetokounmpo in the deal as well.
Probably.
Okay, I'll add to that. So the Thunder get Giannis and Thanasis, and Milwaukee gets Chet Holmgren, Lou Dort, Keeson Wallace, Davis Bertans, salary filler. 2024 Houston first, 2025 Heat first, 2025 Philly first, 2026 Clippers first, 2026 Rockets first, and 2027 Denver first. So you are stacking up on some potential valuable picks in really impressive draft classes in 2025 and 2026.
That's a great way to start a rebuild. Like, you get a potential number 1, number 2 guy in Holmgren. You get Casey Wallace kind of looks similar to what, like at his, his play style looks similar to what Drew Holiday's looked like in the past for them. Like, and then all the draft picks, you're getting prime picks in these big years where, guys like Cooper Flag and Boozer will be available. You go out and get one of those guys to pair with Chet, and then you've all these other picks and like prospects in the margins that you probably get from our deals. That's a really quick rebuild, in my opinion, and that would make sense to do, to turn around from a team that's, the oldest team in basketball to, become one of the younger teams again.
Yeah, this is a trade I want to clarify with people that wouldn't happen this year. Like, the Bucks should try to contend this year. It's not a trade that's happening right now, but this is more of like a year down the road trade, because Milwaukee's the oldest team in the NBA, like you said. And Drew Holiday is getting older, and he's contemplating retirement. Chris Middleton's getting older. Brook Lopez is getting older. And are we sure Brook Lopez is going to replicate what he did last year? Was last year just another pop-up year? Because he was playing so far ahead what he did the year prior. So this Bucks team, it feels like it's kind of falling off. They don't have control on their own draft picks. No control of their draft picks. They don't have financial flexibility. So after this year, if the Bucks aren't like the clear-cut title favorite, then what's the upside for Giannis? Somebody who has made it very clear his top intention is to contend. It doesn't matter where he is. He wants to contend. So if they don't contend this year, then I think that's going to lead to a potential Giannis trade idea. And if not, the Bucks will lose him for nothing. Kind of like what Shaq did in 1990s when the Magic tried to contend with him and Penny, but then they got swept by MJ, and then he went to the Lakers for nothing. You don't want that to happen if you're the Bucks. That sets you back a decade. The Magic didn't make the playoffs for 12 years after that. So I think it's a no-brainer. If the Bucks clearly aren't the same team as they have been in the past after this year, they should deal Giannis because they get a Godfather package and they can get a potential franchise player and picks, kind of like what OKC did in the Paul George trade. They got a Shea, and then they got like 6 firsts. Like, maybe you can do that in this type of deal, and you get Chet and 6 firsts.
Yeah, there's a lot of upside to deal with those guys, and it's probably a quick turnaround as well. Like if you trade all of your guys off, you can get a lot of top tier prospects, quick draft picks. I don't think we're looking at a decade process where you have to get back to the playoffs. Like I think we're talking about a 3-4 year type of thing.
But if Giannis leaves for nothing, that could be a decade
Yeah.
process.
Yep.
Because having no control of your draft picks as a team in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, without young talent, that's a bad spot to be in. That's like what people are worried with Phoenix, but worse. So
yeah, like no disrespect to Marjan Beauchamp, but he's their best prospect under 25 years old. Like, I don't know. That's kind of rough.
All they have to do is draft another Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, just find one of the best players ever in the second round. You're good.
Yep. If they do that, they'll be just fine. But yeah, I think we're both on the same page. Oklahoma City is a great spot, honestly, for any star that demands a trade. I don't think I would make this type of package if it's for a guy like Embiid, because I'm not sure if Embiid gets you over the hump. And I wonder if his game is too heliocentric next to Shea. So that's one thing. But a guy like Giannis, this is the type of package that Sam Presti has to wait for. This is why you trade for all those first-round picks. It isn't to draft 20 guys in 5 years because you can't – there's not enough roster spots for it. You have to put all of your chips on the table and get a megastar in a deal because not many teams have the assets to do that, but Sam Presti has positioned himself to do so. So this is a potential great opportunity for Presti down the road, and I would be surprised in 2 years if Oklahoma City doesn't make a big trade. So it's definitely very interesting. And plus, we talked about the nice thing with Giannis is he is not a big market biased player. He wants to go somewhere where he can win. And a lot of teams today that have the assets to land him also have a franchise player. That's the good thing. Yep. He isn't going – it's not like Carmelo Anthony from Denver to New York. It isn't like that. You go to Oklahoma City, you have Shea. You might have J-Dub. You might have Giddey or Chet, right? You might have some of those guys. You go to San Antonio, you get Victor. And you can go down the road, like to a lower extent. If you go to the Knicks, you have Jalen Brunson next to you. So all these good options have other great players around him and can afford them.
Absolutely.
And we're going to transition to the final topic of our show today, and that is talking about the 2024 NBA draft. One of the most, I guess, perplexing drafts in a while. You can say it hasn't been like the most impressive coming into the college season, but there's some talent here. The problem is all the talent at the top has at least one major hole or an upside question. So there's no clear-cut number one guy. So for this series, we're going to give you guys, or this segment, we're going to give you guys our preseason number one guy, and then we'll list other candidates who we think have a chance to go number one. So, Zach, you want to start out?
Yeah, my number one preseason guy is Justin Edwards from Kentucky. He's a 6'8" forward. I like his pull-up shooting a lot. I think he's got legit 3-level scoring upside. I like his defense. I think he's got a lot of B-plus attributes. I think the question is, what's his elite trait? I think this year he'll develop his shot even more. I think he'll be an elite level shooter and pull-up jump shooter. But I just think overall I see a lot of number one pick traits with him, and I thought he had a good global jam overseas when Kentucky won gold. I think he's looking good already. I think he'll put himself in a good position to be the number one pick, potentially as Kentucky's best player, as they have a lot of prospects in Kentucky this year. I think he'll kind of separate himself from the rest of the crowd on his own team even. And I think he's poised to have a really big season.
Zach, are you sure you don't have an Edwards bias?
I might like players more with the last name Edwards. It might be possible.
It might be the Timberwolves syndrome, man. I don't know, but
it might.
I mean, with Justin Edwards, he's fourth on my board personally right now, but if he does become an elite pull-up shooter, I think that answers a ton of questions. I think his jump shot is smooth right now. I wouldn't call it elite right now. I would call it good, but he isn't a consistent shooter off the catch yet. And, you know, he has some good pull-up shooting flashes, but It hasn't come to full swing, but he's a 17-year-old. He's 17,
Yep.
18 years
Oh
old,
no, I think
right?
he's older. He's
Oh yeah, he's
19.
going to be 20 in this draft, right? He's an older
Yeah.
prospect. Okay.
Yep.
So never mind. You're right. You reminded me he's an older prospect. But if that jump shot becomes really good, especially off the dribble, it makes life a lot easier. Absolutely. So I do question, like you said, people talk about his athleticism. I don't see it as top tier. Like he's got good length. He's got a decent first step. He's got decent footwork, but he
B
isn't
plus
overly
athlete.
strong. B plus athlete. Isn't overly explosive, not overly strong. Yeah, I also think his driving has some to be desired. He's got really good footwork, which might suggest good driving upside. But kind of like Jalen Green in Houston, it feels like he starts a step early too much. I always think he can get an extra step at the rim, and that really hurts his efficiency. And he isn't the vertical athlete like Jalen Green is. So it makes me think he's going to struggle finishing around the rim in the short term. But in this draft, I can't argue him being the favorite to go number one.
Sure.
My number one prospect, I'm not sure. I don't think this is a commonality yet, but I think it should be. I think it's Stephon Castle out of UConn. And here's the thing. The reason why I like Castle is because I think he has the most clear path of being a primary creator on a solid team. 6'6", shifty, really good handle. Kind of like Edwards, he isn't as explosive. He isn't as strong. I would argue Edwards is a better athlete than Castle is. But what Castle has is unbelievable timing, unbelievable shiftiness, and he has unbelievable flexibility around the rim. Like he didn't shoot great around the rim in high school, but I don't think that is going to be the case long term because he has good touch and he has hang time and he can finish around the rim. And he's starting to become a comfortable pull-up shooter off the dribble when the matchup suggests it. He's a good passer. So we're talking about a 6'6" guard who has a knack for the rim, who could pull up and make players around him better. I've heard some Markelle Fultz comparisons, especially Washington Markelle Fultz. I even see a little bit of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander there. A little bit, not quite Shai, but some similarities there. So I would take him number one today.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I got him number 3. I think him and my number 8 prospect, Donovan Clingan, could be a pretty nasty duo for UConn this year. I just like Castle's ability to like play at his own pace and find reads for others. And we'll see if the finishing fully comes along this year, the shot, all those types of things. I like him. If we want to start mentioning other guys at the top,
is that the best
I think
1-2
we could.
punch?
In college basketball.
Yeah, is that the best 1-2? No, in the world. In the world, is that better than LeBron and AD? Yeah, college basketball. Come on.
Well, probably not. I would probably go Proctor and Filipowski for next year over them. I think Castle and Clingan are the better prospect duo, but for college basketball specifically, Filipowski could win National Player of the Year. I think Clingan could be in that conversation as well. But I think Proctor is going to be ahead of Castle as a college basketball player for sure next year. Not really as a prospect, for sure, college basketball player.
Not sure if I agree.
Yeah,
I'm not as in on Proctor as everybody else is, but we'll see.
I guess I have him top 10. I have him number 10. I believe a lot what we saw at the end of the year with the elite shooting touch and the elite passing, not turning the ball over, and then just the fact of being like a 6'5" guard that control everything. And then you got, Filipowski, who's a double-double machine at 7 foot. He shot the ball poorly, but he has legit fluidity beyond the three-point line. I think he was somebody that I was kind of higher on last year's draft, but then he had I don't know why he pulled out of I don't know why he pulled out of last year's class. I don't know. I don't get it. So he went back. He made the decision that G.G. Jackson should have made. But yeah, I think that's probably a better like college basketball in general duo.
Yeah, I think offensively for sure because Filipowski, he could do more on offense than Clingan can. And obviously Proctor has a year of experience on top of Castle.
Yeah, that's basically it. It's
Yeah,
a year
I,
of
I
experience.
I don't think that's crazy. I think those two will be really fun, both duos at Duke and UConn next year. So I can't hate on that take. Who's another guy you think could go number one?
Well, I got 3 G League Ignite guys in my top 7. The highest player I've ranked now is Montez Buzelis, the 6'10", 6'11", shot-making forward, has some shot blocking traits, can pass, saw okay handle. I mean, a good handle for a 6'10" guy, I guess.
Yeah,
Definitely some stuff to work on there, though. Some shot creation stuff to work on, but just overall, the offensive upside there with him is really, really good. There's a reason why he was the projected number 1 guy for a little bit until some other guys have kind of taken over. But he's currently, in my opinion, the best prospect on that team. I'm not sure where you rank on the best prospect in that team or not.
I also have Buzelis for now, but I've also had him
Okay.
last. I mean,
Yeah.
I
It's
have
close.
those guys, Buzelis, Holland, and Almanzo. I think 4 spots separated.
Gotcha.
So they're
Yeah,
very close.
it's pretty similar for me.
Yeah, I like Buzelis. He's fun. I think he's going to be the most fun player on the G League because he offensively he's 6'10", and even though he struggled shooting his junior year, he shot really well his senior year, and I buy into that shot long term. He's got a pretty shot, really good natural touch, and I think he's going to be one of those 6'10" shooters who dunks everything. Can play in transition, complementary, create. You know, he's one of those guys who is also a favorite to go number one. It's just I don't know if he has the upside to be like, the number one pick that you want, like the Paolo Bancheros, the Anthony Edwards. Because when I watch him on offense create, he has an upright handle a little bit. Like it's good for 6'10", but it doesn't feel like if all momentum is just zapped, if all momentum is zapped, he's not going to be the guy who's going to create consistent space because he isn't very
Mhm.
physical, doesn't create a lot of space. But he definitely is really intriguing. I think he has a case to go number one.
Another guy of a case that could go number 4 on my board, Isaiah Collier for USC. Second
Mm-hmm.
best passer in the class to me. You know, 6'3", 6'4" guard. He's like a bulldog on the court. Really talented driver,
Yeah.
especially under the rim scorer. Waiting for that shot to come around. If it does, that's his case to go number 1 probably. Free throw shooting too, all of that. But I think off the bat, you have a super strong and physically capable like passing guard that can score. Like just off the bat, seems really intriguing. I think he could have a really big year for USC.
I agree. I totally agree with your analysis. If he can master or not master, but become an adequate shooter, I think he is the hands down number one pick. Hands down number one
Mm-hmm.
pick. Because while he doesn't have the above the rim style that a Scoot Henderson or a John Morant has, he's a really fearless driver who's incredibly physical and he's got a great frame. He's got great feet. This might sound funny because he's not this guy, but he does have some Dwayne Wade elements to him with the way he drives. And that's really intriguing. And you also add that where he is one of the 3 best passers in this draft. So you're getting a really darn good playmaker, somebody who can pressure in the rim, not as above the rim as you would hope, but he can dunk it on you. He can finish around the rim. And the scary thing, though, is because he isn't under the rim guard, he doesn't have much of a middle game. So he's going to try to finish above the trees. And he doesn't have the like John Morant, I'm jumping over the guy element to him. So that's a question. I question his scoring a little bit, unless he becomes a good jump shooter. He's a fearless shooter. That's a good sign. He's a really fearless shooter. He is willing to shoot. So maybe that's a good sign, but his touch needs work. His free throw needs work. If he can do that, if he can become a solid shooter, like 33% from 3, 75% on the line, I think that alone makes him yeah, I'll say it. I think that makes him the number 1 pick.
At number 5, I have Ron Holland. I think this is somebody we're both kind of lower on.
Mm-hmm.
And For me, it's like he's more of a play finisher, not a play creator, and I just don't see a lot of like offensive upside. Like I think he can pass. I think he can get you 15 a game, but he's never going to beat you really off the dribble. He's not going to, be a knockdown shooter from three or the free throw line. Like I think he's more of just like the under the basket type of guy. He's not an overwhelmingly good athlete. Like he's not like a Zion type athlete. If he was, that would make him probably number one prospect. But I mean, he's like the reason why he's still top five though. He's a game changer defensively and with his motor, 6'8", really lengthy. He can just disrupt everything there, and he still has capable offensive traits, but he just lacks, in my opinion, that star trait that's going to prevent him from being like a number one or number two.
Wholeheartedly agree. He's got that dog in him, man. He is a dog,
Yeah.
and that's a good sign. He is really competitive. He is really tough, and that is a great sign. Insane motor. But you talked about it. He's a play finisher right now, and the scary thing though is for a guy of that archetype, I think a very similar archetype for him was like Scotty Barnes at Florida State. I think that's a really good comp for him because they are both like transition players, good playmaking feel, switchable, high motor. But he isn't the athlete Giannis or Scotty Barnes is. He's not quite the athlete. Like he's a good athlete. He's got good length. He's got a solid natural frame. He's not going to be like jacked, but he's got a good frame. So he's a good athlete. He just isn't a great athlete. So for a guy of that archetype, is his offense going to be really shrinked at the NBA level? Because he can't use his athleticism like a Giannis or Zion and get away with it. And if he doesn't have the skill development to catch up, what is he going to be offensively? And I really question that. I think he really needs to develop that jumper. He's around a 65-ish% free throw shooter, below 30% from three. So I just think there's too many offensive questions for him to go number one personally. And he also doesn't really have a great left hand. So, he's a ball of clay. I love his defense, love his transition playmaking. But outside of that, I really question his scoring at the NBA level.
Yeah, he more than anybody kind of needs like this crazy offense development, something that we've
Yeah.
seen from guys in the past, like Brandon Miller. He went from a late lotto guy to a top three guy because of his crazy offensive, shooting, and like Jabari Smith, kind of the same thing. So
They always had offense, though. They always did.
Yeah.
Brandon Miller was the best mid-range shooter in high school basketball. Jabari Smith was an offensive first player in high school. I think it would take a Jimmy Butler type outlier development for him to become, number one pick worthy. So, yeah, I personally don't think he should be a strong candidate to go number one right now, but I think down the road he could be. I think if his shot develops, then I think there's a case, but I just don't think there's enough offense there.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like he's kind of like the consensus one, and it just doesn't make sense. Like when you look at boards and like
somebody has to be prom queen, dude. Somebody has to be the prom queen. Like somebody has to. So it's one of those things. Like I get it. Like the idea of a 6'8" athletic connector is intriguing, but yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think we get it, honestly. And then another guy that we could talk about, Ade Mara, just committed to UCLA, coming from overseas. 7'3", 18 years old, so intriguing. Like, just being 7'3", moving like that. I think passing is maybe his best trait too. I know you know more about him than I do. What are your thoughts on him? He's number 6 on my board.
He's 3 on my board. I think what people do in drafts like this is they bet on traits. And that's a lot of the reason why Holland is considered number one. I just don't think he has quite the traits for that argument, but you can't teach 7'3". You just can't.
Yep.
You can't teach 7'3". So that alone, I think, gives him an edge in this conversation. But he's got great hands. He's got good touch, really good playmaking feel. I think he has a foundation to be a pretty okay shooter, and he can protect the rim. I think when I watch him, I think of the Andrew Bogut's. I think a little bit Marc Gasol. Like those are good outcomes for him. I think he could be a really, really good defender because he's already built at that age. He's never going to be like jacked, but he's going to be pudgy strong, kind of like the Gasol brothers, kind of like Valanciunas. Like he's going to be big. He's going to be as strong as wood, and he's going to be a playmaker with skill and offense, great play finisher, and good rim protector. I've considered him as my number one prospect at different points.
I mean, if he comes out first few games and like drops a few 20 bombs with a few blocks a game and just shows out, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people are moving him up to number one. Like it's just about like seeing it for the first few times with him, I feel like, and just what it looks like. But our guy, my lowest rated of the big three on the G League night, Izan Almanza. I got him at 7. I think he's going to be a really talented two-way player at the NBA level. He does have shooting questions, which is unfortunate that a lot of these guys have shooting questions in this class at the top, but just so talented in the post for a forward, like generational, like footwork and like fundamental ability down there.
It's amazing.
The footwork, the counters, the spins, the hook shot he's got. It's also good. The passing he has down the low post. If he was like 7 foot 6'11" with those traits, that'd be nuts. I think he's more like 6'7", 6'8" though, and he's really developed as an athlete too, which has really bolstered his stock. And I've seen people like one of my favorite scouts that I follow has a number 1 on his board. Like there's a legit belief within this dude that he could maybe be the best player in this G League Ignite team. What's weird though with him, he averaged 9 and 6 last year.
In overtime. Oh, yeah, that was weird.
Against high school talent, which it's so weird. Like he's somehow like playing better and producing more against pro players than he was against these teenagers. I don't understand that. That's what kind of makes me a little skeptic on him. But he has a legit chance to prove himself this year with the G League Ignite and the pro players. But that part's weird.
It is weird. And I always wonder, is that a sign that he plays better under structured basketball, which usually is where IQ shines, like FIBA, like professional basketball? Is it an athleticism thing? Is it if he can't keep up with the pace, he's kind of a ghost on offense? I don't know what it is. It might just simply be he didn't receive the great opportunity because, he was an international player going into an American environment. That's possible too. I have to see it in the G League to have an answer to that question. But I'll tell you this, I think he's more 6'8", 6'9", and I think he has really good length. He's got great feet. And what makes me encouraged about his shooting upside is he has great touch. He just has great touch on the block, and he's got good feet. He's a good passer, good switchable defender. He just does everything well. Now we'll have to see what his elite trait is, but I love his skill. I love his feet. I love his feel.
So if you had to categorize players that have a shot to go number 1, would you put 7 guys in there, or what's the number? I think it's probably 7 for me.
I want to throw one more name in there. I want to throw Alex Zar in there. I have him fringe top 10 right now, but he probably has the most physical gifts in this draft. He's 7'1", 7'5" wingspan, can handle it in transition, some offensive skill, incredible talent. Some people think he's the most talented player in the entire draft, and he showed out in the NBL preseason. He's playing in the NBL, kind of like Josh Giddey and LaMelo Ball in the past, and he really showed out. He showed some great signs in the preseason, and if he's able to be a really productive player there with how gifted he is, I think somebody would take a bet on him in the top 3, genuinely.
Yeah.
So he has a really strong case to be number 1 if he plays well, but there's legitimate toughness and motor questions with him, which are pretty big turnoffs for me. But maybe it's a kid thing. We'll see. Maybe I don't know what it is, but I want to see more of that, relentlessness to him. I want to see that tenacity. I want to see that fire. I want to see him try to kill people with that size and just put it together. So I think he's another sleeper. So I think there's about 8 guys. There's 8 guys who have a chance right now. I would say the favorite should be I think Collier, Castle, Bazelis, and Mara should be the favorites.
Yeah, I don't know too much about Sarr as a player, I guess, but like that Australian league, I mean, the NBL, I mean, we saw LaMelo Ball, who was really underranked as a high school prospect, like in the 40s, I think, on some sites. And then he goes over and plays 12 games with the NBL, and all of a sudden he's a top 2 pick or top 3
I've seen
pick.
enough.
Yeah, like Sarr could just, do yes, a similar thing to them, play more games, obviously, but like, yeah, there's a lot of upside for him there too. I kind of want to give an underrated guy for me, Scotty Middleton, who I have number 9 right now, somebody who I think has like top 3, top 5 pick upside if everything goes right for Ohio State. He's a 6'7" forward, one of the best shooters in the class easily. He can handle the ball. He can create shots. He has a lot of those flashes, but there's still like questions of how consistent that is. He's a good defender. He can pass.
Good
Like
length.
there's a lot of upside with him, and I think we could see something similar with like a second half of the year Ohio State type outbreak that we've seen from guys like Branham and Sensabaugh in the past.
Yep.
Like I think there's a legit shot he could go really high in this year's class. I don't really see like number 1 type guy there, but I see somebody who could be a top 5 pick. I also think Elliot Cadeau, underrated player from North Carolina. I think he's the best passer in the class. Super talented. He's so fast. Maybe the fastest player in the class as well. But he's really short. He's like a little taller than Jordan McLaughlin. So that's the concern there. If he was like 6'2", 6'3", I think he would probably be a top 5 guy. But he's just not. He's really really short, and that's going to hurt him.
How is this shooting?
I don't know. Actually, that's kind of the thing that I didn't really learn much about. I was watching like prospect reviews on him, and they weren't really talking about his shooting. I think it's kind of maybe average.
Man, it's hard for me to buy into really tiny guards who can't shoot. I think Sharif Cooper taught me that. Because Sharif Cooper, nobody in this draft class is the passer Sharif Cooper is. Probably nobody in this draft has the ball on the string like Cooper had, but he just couldn't shoot, and he wasn't the athlete, so he couldn't really overcome it in the NBA level. He's going to be a really good European player, really good G League player, but in the NBA, it's going to be really hard for Cooper to consistently display high-end value.
So we can kind of agree that like Ron Holland consensusly might be a little overrated. Is there like, I know there's somebody else that we kind of agree on is kind of like a little overrated within this class, DJ Wagner.
Yeah. Wagner, he's I just need to see more. I mean, I love his wiggle. I love that he tries to attack, but he's got a really good floater, good touch. He is not a consistent shooter, not consistent mechanics. And around the rim, I don't think he can finish over the trees. I think he has to do floaters. So I think he's like a Tyrese Maxey light. I think that's my comp. But he's probably a better passer than Maxey is. So
Yep.
I think he deserves lottery consideration. I just don't think he's a potential top 2 pick like some people think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's like a select, like large portion of people that have him like in the top 5. And I just don't see that. I think he'll be like around 13 or 14 for me if I put out a full list, which is still good. I mean, he's still a good player, and somebody like even if the Timberwolves, like if he fell there, he would make some sense, I guess, there. But like, I don't know, he needs to develop the shot a little more. He's not a really great athlete, so I don't think the finishing around the back, I think that's gonna have to change, and then the tunnel vision has to change as well. I think he's still a good player, but he's not the number 1 prospect that he was over high school for 3 straight years. And I think that kind of reflected a little bit in the rankings when he dropped recently, but I still think he's lower than what he was listed as. And he's not somebody that I'm, top 10 high on for sure, at least. Like I would rather have Tyrese Proctor among some other guards.
His dad was the number 6 pick a while back. His grandpa played in the NBA. So assuming he gets drafted, he'll be the first 3rd generation NBA player ever, which is crazy because these aren't 7-footers who are coming in generationally. he is literally a 6'1" guard. His dad was a 6'1" guard. So I think it's quite amazing that we're having,
It is.
6-foot guards be the ones who trailblaze in this field.
Yeah. I think, he'll be an NBA player. I would be surprised if he wasn't.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we got everything out that we needed to on that topic. And I think that's everything on Windshield Hoops today. We talked about Giannis trade destinations. We talked about the World Cup. We talked about potential number one picks, like all 4,000 of them. And it's Zach, anything you want to say before we end the show?
I mean, I guess, from us, you'll see a lot of, coverage on these guys probably throughout the season. Like, that's the emphasis we want to bring. We got, obviously, weekly stack risers will be coming back during the regular season. That was a series we started out every show with before, and I'm sure at some point in the middle of shows or the end of shows, we'll kind of update you guys maybe on how guys are doing, if guys are dropping or falling, stuff like that.
I'm with Zach on that one. And me personally, I need a nap. I need a nap, man. I mean, I was up till like 4:30 a.m. with my dog at the doctor, so that was fun. So we're going to get some rest, get this out as soon as possible. And like Zach said, we are going to post consistent coverage of especially the draft. I think what makes us nuts is I think we enjoy these draft classes more than the ones with Victor Wembanyama because there's more mystery.
Yeah, I do. I agree with you. I was thinking about that like a month ago when I started looking at the class, and I was like, okay, this is actually like more fun than last year because there's so many different possibilities in how you can rank guys, and it's harder to, put guys in certain spots. It's not like, okay, yeah, we know who the top 3 or 4 or 5 are already. Let's work on 6, 7, 8. Like, it's actually a question who number 1 and 2 are this year for me, and that's fun.
2020 was my favorite draft class to cover. 2022 was not far off. So it's pretty funny that all of those drafts, nobody agreed on the number one pick. I mean, 2020, is it LaMelo Ball? Is it Anthony Edwards? Both turned out to be awesome. 2022, is it Paolo? Is it Chet? Is it Jabari? 2023, is it half of the American population? Like, nobody knows. And there's not a lot of draft classes like that. I mean, 2018 was sort of like that, where they had like, is it Michael Porter Jr. coming into college? Is it Bagley? Is it Ayton? Nobody talked about Luka like that yet, but he was talked about as a potential top 5 pick, but he wasn't talked about as the number 1 pick because at that time people were still pretty hesitant on international players, which is why he didn't go number 1 overall in a draft where he was clearly the best player. So, yeah, this is going to be a fun draft. This is where scouts make their money.
Big time.
Yup. And once again, everybody, thank you so much for listening to Windshield Hoops, and we'll see you next week.